Welcome to Self-Defense Sunday here on 411 Outdoors. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to generate more power with your hands. Stick around. I hope you're doing well, my friend. Thanks for dropping in. I dedicate Sundays to all elements of self-defense, whether it's, training in different particular weapons and skills, or just the psychological side of it. It's something I'm very passionate about in life, and it's just something I want to include as a big part of my channel and my content. Today, we're going to be talking about striking with the hands in particular. There's all kinds of different ways we can strike, but today we're going to focus on the hands. In many cases, our response to getting struck oftentimes comes down to the element of surprise. Makes me think of something Israel Adesanya from the UFC said. He said, man, everybody's got power. My niece has got power, and she's a young girl. And I know exactly what he's talking about. There have been times in my life where I've been playing around, wrestling around with, a younger sibling or a nephew, and I accidentally get struck out of nowhere. Boom, they sock me just playing around, and for a moment I'm stunned and surprised, and if they wanted to run away from me at that time, they definitely could have. Our response to pain does become a lot stronger when we know what's coming. That's why a lot of times you'll see dudes, they'll stick out there, go ahead and hit me. There's a part of them that's bracing themselves for, the best that person has, which I think is a dumb move. I've seen a lot of people do that, and it didn't work out well for them. However, when we know something is coming, it does affect our response. Nevertheless, there are many ways that we can maximize our power in our strikes. Now, I'm going to be real here. There's no magic formula to this. A person reaches a point in life where they might be too feeble for this kind of stuff. There's a point in life where your ability to strike does diminish. A lot of times with boxers and professional fighters, the power is the last thing to go. I will say that. If we ever have to strike someone, it's not going to feel good to that person, no matter which way we deliver it. But we can deliver a little bit of power, or we can deliver a lot more. Let's first lay a foundation. If you have a martial arts or a boxing background, you probably already know where I'm going to be headed with this video. But if you have no training background at all whatsoever, it's not very difficult to understand how to properly strike with the hand. Although I'm not putting a lot of focus on speed in this video, as much as I am other things that I believe build power, I will say something about speed. Speed does contribute to power. The faster that you get, the more potential you can have for power. I just want to say that speed comes from repetition. It comes from training. The more you train something, the more you get familiar with it, the faster you'll get. I think one of the first things we need to discuss is the fact that you can sustain injury striking someone else. You can break your hand, you can break your wrist, you can shatter bones. So we don't just want to talk about how to generate more power, we want to talk about how to use those weapons as well so that we can minimize the risk of injury. Strong hands and wrists are very important because some common injuries that take place in striking with the hands is broken wrist, turning the wrist in a bad direction, boxer's fracture with these knuckles back here because of not striking with the right ones, injuries to the side of the hand here. So it's very, very important to build the muscles in your hand, to build the muscles in your wrist so that you can have a greater stability. In order to throw with more power, you have to have weapons that can withstand the power you're throwing. In the street, there's no wrist wraps, there's no gloves, it's just bare hands. I highly recommend getting some hand grips and just building up the weight slowly over time. It builds the hands up greatly. You can see what it does to the muscle structure there. Builds this muscle, it just builds the entire hand. Not only that, but it builds the forearm, as you can tell. And good forearms are necessary as well. You can also strengthen your wrist, hands, and forearms by doing dumbbell curls this way. Get you something that gives you good resistance. I use this 30-pounder here, and I'll do about 30 reps in a set. Another exercise I'll do is I'll let the dumbbell roll, and I'll pull it back this way. Since self-defense is important to me and being able to use my hands is important, these are exercises I do all the time. So let's first look at ways that we can strike with the hand. Let's talk about the hand as a weapon and what parts we can strike with. Let's talk about a closed fist first. You're not striking with the entire hand, you're striking with this portion of the hand here. These knuckles are tied to the bones in the arm, whereas they're not right here. They're kind of loose. You can feel it. That's where boxer's fracture comes in. People miss and they hit with this part of the hand and they break their fingers right here, break their hand right here because it's not connected in one single piece like these knuckles are. You know, if I strike here, I'm connected all the way through, whereas I just catch the end of him here with these last two knuckles, I run the risk of breaking my hand. So obviously you're going to have more power if you strike with the right part of the hand versus the wrong part. If you strike with the backside here, you're not going to have the same power as if you make that connection here, where your whole body, the bones and everything is involved. You can also strike with the back part of your hand. You can strike things like the carotid artery here with the back part of your hand. But when you do that, you want to make sure that you tense your hand up. Don't just do it loose, because that's going to hurt. Your fingers will bang against each other. Tense the hand up if you're going to strike that way. But you can strike with this part of the hand. You can also clench the fist and strike with this meat right here. It gets really tight. It's like a hammer fist. You can do hammer strikes with this part of the hand. You can also use these phalanges. Just don't come in straight. You'll break your fingers. Keep them bent. If you're going to touch somebody's eyes, keep your fingers bent. You can do palm strikes. Palm strikes to the face, behind the ear. I don't know if any of you ever watched the old Pancrase competitions with Bas Rutten and people like that. He was hitting people with devastating strikes and it was getting devastating results. You can use the palm for smacks. So there's a lot of ways you can strike with the hand. It's not about just putting up your dukes and throwing punches. There's gouging, there's chops, there's hammer fists, there's open-handed strikes. So now that we know how diverse this weapon is, let's make it more powerful. One of the first things we must establish is that striking is not merely reaching out and touching someone. It's something that the whole body gets involved in. And this runs all the way down through the legs and to the feet. Everything from the foot up is ultimately involved. You know, I could reach out with my arm and punch here, or I could allow my whole body to go into it. It's a much different story. Another example, I could take my left hand and hit this way, or I can put that whole body into it. It's one snap involving not only the member, but the body all in one motion. Instead of just touching, allow that whole body to go into it. This applies to every strike. If I was going to smack somebody, I don't want to just come upside his head this way with my arm. That might not feel pleasant, but it's not as powerful as bringing my body into it. I'm not just going to grab him and hit like this. I'm going to grab, get that body into it, let that torque and that snap come all at one time. If I was just going to do an open flat to the face, I'm not just going to touch him. I'm bringing everything into it. If I was going to flat hand him to the face this way, just like with boxing, we put that whole body in it from the feet all the way up. We're going through the target. So it's the same here. Bang! Body and everything in it. Not just simply making a connection with the member, putting everything in it. Again, this applies across the board. There's a couple of more things I want to talk about, such as how to strike with a closed fist, as well as talking about issues with reach, understanding your reach and understanding where the power zone is, and then we'll put everything together. People are largely divided on a closed fist. Some people say you should never strike with a closed fist. I get that in many scenarios, but I don't like limitations. I think there's a time for that fist. There's a time and a place for it. The question is, how do we do it and remain stable? Because it is very easy to punch and turn your wrist this way. I'm talking very easy when your hands are not wrapped, to make a connection this way and turn your wrist, or to come in the wrong way and turn your wrist. If I was going to punch straight at somebody's head in the street, I'm probably either going to punch this way straight in, or I'm going to punch slightly at an angle. I think this is dangerous dead on. I've just experienced that, especially with headshots, unless you're at the right angle. But the thing is, when you're punching this direction, it's very easy to get a solid connection all the way through. Bruce Lee was a big fan of rolling hands on the street. He wanted to come in this way. Plus, it allows you to come in between somebody's guard very easily, coming in that way. So I'm a big fan of this for punching in the street, or this, a slight turnover. Not necessarily this, but this. Now, sometimes with the solar plexus, I like to come in and turn it, because I feel like so much of my body is in it. You know, striking to the throat and the head, boom. I love coming in this way. Whether it's here, it's a bad enough situation, or coming in straight this way, because I've got so much support this way and my wrist feels so solid. It's the same way if I come in this way. I still feel like I have so much more wrist support. You know, if I'm coming in this way, I can be slightly angled here, but man, turning my fist almost to the vertical position, I just like the stability that I have with my wrist in those street situations. I can just step in and blast, and I just never turn my wrist. If I'm punching from this angle, I may come in and turn my fist this way, boom, right there, if I can get in. The key is just knowing how to maintain the stability of your wrist. And if you can throw with great power. If you understand how the body goes into it and how to maintain stability, you've increased your ability to punch harder. Now, let's talk about reach. Outside of being physically able to strike and having hands and wrists that are prepared to strike and understanding the torque and the snap from the body that goes into striking, we got to talk about reach as well. It's good to get familiar with your reach because, for example, I don't have very long arms. I've got to get in there nice and tight if I'm going to maximize power. Somebody with a long reach, with a long extension, they have the advantage of being able to be further out. So you got to get familiar with your reach, because I'm not just making a connection here with the target. I want to go through the target. I want to envision going through the target, not just touching the target. If I put my body into a outside range shot, I'm still not getting as much as if I get inside and go beyond the target. I know I literally can't punch through somebody, but you almost want to get in there and envision being able to get through that target, because you're going to throw with a lot more power. They're going to be on the receiving end of something that's much more powerful if you're in tight enough to get the full extension of what you're going for. Not just here, but here. So let's put this application together with a lot of different kinds of shots. I'm right here. I need to all of a sudden act, and let's just say that I'm going to go for a double smack. I'm not just going to, obviously, right? No, that's going to frustrate them. It's not going to hurt them. But things change when I go with both sides, with the body coming from both ends. Let's just say I want to throw a quick flat hand straight into his face and then tag his solar plexus. I'm going to put all the torque and body into this all at one time. Bang, bang. All in one. I'm digging in there because I'm envisioning going through here and here, and I'm snapping and putting it all in there at one time. Here's the thing about self-defense. When you decide that you're going to have to defend yourself, you got to be committed, which means you got to get in range to actually hit this person. You can't do it from the outside, backing up and being hesitant. You got to get in there where you can get that full range of motion in. When you decide that it's time to do it, you got to be committed to it. So it's sufficient physicality, durable weapons, durable hands and wrist. It's body, torque, snap, working together with the weapon, and it's understanding your reach, understanding your power points, and then being willing to get in there with all of those things working together at one time. If you train this, your power is going to increase. Obviously, you need to be working out, doing calisthenics, doing things that build your body as a whole. Because no matter what kind of shot you're doing, whether it's a punch, whether it's something to the body, whether it's a hook, whether it's an open hand shot, whether it's a smack, whether it's some kind of chop, some kind of hammer fist, all of these things apply. So what I want you to do is continue building your weapon, build your body, build your hands and wrist, learn how to get in there and snap with your entire body when you're striking. Snap with your whole body. Don't just send the weapon. Don't do some half-hearted body leaning. Let that body snap with everything you do. If it's a smack, let that body come in. If it's a hook, let that body come in. Let that snap, let it come from the feet all the way up to where you are, and train it to work all together at one time. I suddenly need to hit this guy, bang. I just put my whole body into it. It becomes instinctive after a while. That's why when you shadow box, you see a lot of guys moving. They're training their whole body to flow, because they're teaching themselves to react as one, not just as one member, but the whole body. You're not going to do damage from the outside. You're not going to do damage as long as you hesitate. You've got to get in there. You've got to be within reach, and you've got to put everything into it. your whole body into that shot with snap and torque and precision. And most of all, you got to keep training it. You got to become instinctive. I hope you have found this video helpful. Thanks so much for watching. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Take care.